Good morning, everybody. My name is Corey Rosen, and you're listening to the Story Podcast. Today, I have a super awesome guest. Before we get to that, I just want to have everybody know that we had our first ever award show last night, giving out little accolades to the community here, and I just want you to be sure to check out our page for all the highlights that are going to be coming out in the next few days here. Some great photos from some great people, and if you came out, thank you so much for coming out. And if you didn't, well, we'll see you next year. Today I have on Mr. Mighty Joe Castro. Joe Castro is a guy from Philadelphia, PA. Ameripolitan rockabilly outfit. Mighty Joe Castro The Gravamen is the latest musical project from accomplished collage artist and musician Mighty Joe Castro, influenced by 50s rock and roll and infused with postmodern Easter eggs, cribbed from old episodes of MTV's 120 Minutes. Mighty Joe Castro takes a modern, lyric-driven approach to songwriting, while the Gravamen layer on a Jesus and Mary chain cover link Wray guitar atmosphere, booming doghouse bass, and swinging beats. The quartet lurks at a crossroads where Sun Records and Creation Records meet. According to Joe Castro, our goal is to play rock and roll in the style of the pioneers, but update it lyrically and sonically. Take what we've learned, everything great that's come after, and go apply it to that original sound. What if Buddy Holly had access to a stack of effect pedals and some Nick Cave and the Bad Seed records? That's the ethos of the band. Currently working on a new full length record, the band released their single Embers in the Ash in 2023. It's the first to follow up their 2020 debut full length album, Come On Angels. Both were recorded at Minor Street Recordings and produced by Brian McTeer. Previously, they released their debut EP, Wake Up, You're Rockin', in 2018. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing great, man. So tell me, where did all? I mean, this is a string of projects. This is like the latest in your string of projects. Where
Yeah.
did this all start for you? Where did music start?
Playing music or just enjoying music or either or.
Either or.
I always just was into music growing up. Just hearing it on the radio and stuff and listening to my parents' records. Uh, Both my parents were first generation like rock and rollers, and I was born in New York, and my dad went to the old Alan Freed shows at the Brooklyn Paramount and stuff, and would tell stories of seeing Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly and Richie Valens and things like that at those shows. My mom was a huge Elvis fan as well, so just being a kid and seeing those records around, like I just sort of gravitated to the imagery on the album covers and just
Mm.
the music. I used to have one of those like Fisher Price used to make this record player that I got, and it was like
Fisher
it
Price.
was plastic, but it would play real records, right?
That's
It
cool.
had a little disc in the center you could pull up for playing 45s, had a built-in speaker, and it would close up like a suitcase. And I gotten that for Christmas one year, and I would just go to yard sales and buy like old rock and roll records at like 5 or 6 years old and just play them at home and stuff. And I just got hooked. And so that was like my sort of first exposure to music, was just stuff like that. Just whatever you hear on the radio and stuff like that.
And so, what did you do from there? Did you like? Oh, I just want to play it.
No, like there wasn't anyone in my house or immediate vicinity who played like an instrument. Like there weren't like guitars or a piano in the corner or anything like that. I always wanted to, and I remember one year I bought a acoustic guitar at a yard sale. I didn't know how to tune it or play it or anything. It just sort of sat there. I just couldn't even figure out. This is like pre YouTube, pre anything like that. So it wasn't until like when I got into high school, I learned how to play the guitar when I was like kind of late, like 18 or something like that. Like at that point, I was really into punk rock, and I found the Ramones. I was really into a lot of like 80s new wave stuff. But even playing music just seemed like something that mere mortals didn't do. You know what I mean? Like you look at it and be like, I don't understand how they're doing this. I wish I could. And then after a while, a couple of friends learned how to play guitar, and I would sort of look at them and be like, well, can you show me a couple chords? And then I just taught myself from there. Like I used to get guitar magazines back in the day. You'd get them, and in the back they'd have this tablature, which would really easy way to learn how to play. It'd show like each of the six strings, and it'd be a corresponding number for which fret you were supposed to put your finger on to sort of play. So you could easily by ear figure out these songs and learn how to play them through this tablature. But back then, at that time, this is 1991, 1992. I mean, all the stuff in the magazines was all heavy metal music, which wasn't really what I wanted to learn how to play, but it was just sort of a good place to start. So I learned like by playing all these old heavy metal songs and stuff.
That's awesome. So when did you first like get comfortable enough to say, okay, I want to do a band?
Yeah, it was like pretty soon. Like I learned the guitar, and that was I was primarily a guitar player. I didn't start singing for a long time, but yeah, I wanted to be a guitar player in a band, and even like once I started playing, I started jamming with friends, and then it was probably about it was maybe like a year and a half till we played like our first show. Um, but yeah, the first band I put together, the first show we ever played at, it was on my 20th birthday, and it was at a party, a graduation party for my ex-girlfriend at her new boyfriend's house. And that was the first show I ever played, which is like about 30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago.
That must have been an interesting show.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just sort of like came up, but I was so hungry to like do a show and play anywhere that it was like, yeah, okay, we'll do it. And I'm still friends there now to this day, and it's all cool. But it was just one of those things where I think even at the time I knew I was like, well, this is a funny story. Like
Yeah, right. Yeah.
who gets put in one of these situations, you know? So I don't know. I like those. I'm always attracted to those kind of things. I thought it was cool.
So did that then band turn into a project and keep going?
Yeah, it turned into a band that was eventually called OPF, which was short for the Obese Pharaohs of Funk. And then later we changed the name to Nero. We were based out of Newark, Delaware. We didn't really play funk music, and we weren't like big people or anything. It was just sort of a name that we just thought was funny and would kind of stick. But it was a mix of like styles. There was some 50s stuff in there, but it was a lot of like punk rock, new wave, stuff like the Smiths were heavy influence to Black Sabbath. It was like, actually, we just released a collection of we put out like an album and 3 or 4 vinyl singles, and we just put that out on streaming recently as a collection called Still Sanguine. The band is called Nero OPF. But yeah, that was like the first band I was in there till from like 93 till 1997. But I grew up like skateboarding and stuff in the 80s, and I really got into that whole idea of the DIY. And so we were making zines. You were like friends of ours were putting out their own records and opening recording studios, just figure out a way to make it happen.
Mhm.
And it's just sort of all stemmed out of that sort of community of being a part of that and just being like, if you want to do it, like figure out a way to do it and make it happen.
Yeah, and you mentioned you were born in New York, and now you're in Newark, Delaware.
Yeah. I was born in New York, and I would live there on Long Island till I was like 3rd grade, I think. And then we moved down. My dad's job got transferred, so we moved down
Gotcha.
to Delaware. And then I grew up down there. And Newark, Delaware had a great music scene for a long time. There were a lot of bands coming out of there. So it was like just a real fertile. You'd go to these local shows, and there would be packed with hundreds of kids, and just sort of the feeling of being in these places, or even these like crowded, sweaty basements with these other kids, like the communal sort of feeling of experienced music at these loud volumes, these bands, these people that you sort of know or want to know or just be like, is really powerful. I mean, I think I'm pretty sure it still goes on nowadays with like basement shows and stuff like that, and having your first experience of music being in a small venue where you can really feel the energy from the band rather than like a stadium, I think is a blessing.
So where did that band go from there? I mean, you've had several projects since then. Where did that take you?
Yeah, after that band, like I said, we did like one full-length album and then a bunch of singles, and that uh broke up. I did another band for a short time called Swing Line, that we did an EP out of, and that kind of fizzled out. And I was almost ready to stop, and then a friend of mine, a guy I knew from the old scene, we'd both moved to Philadelphia, and his name was Christopher Tucker, and we put a band together called The Situation. And he was the singer-songwriter. I played guitar, and we brought 2 of my friends from school, my friend Larry, my friend John Paul, and we formed that band. And that band was around for about 5 or 6 years. We put out 2 records on a label from Ohio called Elephant Stone. And we did some touring, went out, played like California, played up and down like the East Coast. Had a great run for a long time, played with a bunch of different bands.
As I say, I'm pretty sure I've heard of The Situation.
Yeah. I mean, we opened up for like The Strokes, the Libertines, Arthur Lee and Love, Not a Surf, Hot Hot Heat. Got to do a bunch of different shows. It was a good run. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
awesome.
And then when that band's time was up, I was kind of burnt out on music for a while, and I wasn't going to do
Mhm.
it anymore. I was just going to concentrate solely on doing art stuff. But yeah, then that only lasted like a couple years, and I was pulled back in to doing music again. Even like when I was just doing art, I was still end up like friends would ask me to do music videos for them, or I was doing flyers. I was still like so involved. I think I was just burnt out for a few years just on the music industry and
Mm.
everything that sort of goes along with that.
You want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, it was just sort of man, I don't know how to put this. Like, there's just so much talk and smoke being blown and like fake friendships, and
It's
there's
so corporate
and
and so
yeah, and then
yeah.
you're dealing with people with substance abuse problems and
Mhm.
partying, and then people not having sort of the right, not being in the same frame of mind as maybe I was at the time of what I wanted to do, and just have people just continually let you down or things. It was just I just gotten burned out on it. We went hard for a good like 5 or 6 years, but and the music industry was changing so much by that time. It was the record labels had less power, and it was going more towards streaming and MP3s, and so there wasn't like any sort of hope of getting like this big record deal or advance that would sort of cover your basic living expenses. And it was just a lot of things going on. I was 31, 32. I think when that band started, I was engaged to one person, but when the band broke up, I was married to someone else. It was just like long, like 5 years, like a lot of living in there. But yeah.
So, what got you back into the current project that you're doing now?
Well, like I said, in those other bands, I was just a guitar player. I never considered myself a
Yeah,
singer, and I didn't really think about it. And then um, we were getting ready. My wife and I were getting ready to have our first child, and so she bought me an acoustic guitar, so I would just have something at the house to like play for the kid to like help her
that's
go to
cute.
sleep. And so I just started learning like all these songs and singing them like simple like Ramon songs and stuff that like I could that would be appropriate for playing for the kid. And then after a while, I was like, I just started enjoying the sound of my own voice. I guess that sounds egotistical, but
Well, no,
you know,
that's great actually.
like I just started thinking, like, I could sing on tune. Like I'm getting better at this. Like, let me just see if there's something here. And then, so it kind of went. And then I was like, well, let me just try writing a song and writing lyrics, because writing lyrics were just always to me, the most intimidating thing. And I picked up the guitar and I wrote this one song in like less than an hour, like start to finish. It's actually on the Gravamen album. It's called "Why Not Just Give In This Time," and I was like, "Wow, I wrote a song in like an hour. Like this is great. Like it's finally happening." And then that was the last time I heard the song. After that, it's just been like a like a slog where you really got to get in there and work. Because like I don't know, I always thought you always hear these things when you're reading music magazines or books, and you hear these stories of like people like Bob Dylan and Neil Young, and they're like, I wrote this song in 15 minutes. It just poured out of me, and I picked the guitar and did all that. And I thought, well, that doesn't happen to me. I can't do it. And it wasn't until years later I read stuff on like Nick Cave and like Leonard Cohen, and I heard that Leonard Cohen worked on the song Hallelujah on it for like 5 years and wrote tons of verses and was scrapping as he worked and worked and worked till he got it to where he wanted it to be. And I thought, well, that I can relate to. Like, I'm not afraid of where I can put the time in, but just a matter of like just putting in time and really working on it. Then I was like, maybe I can do that. So that was sort of the inspiration to try to go out and do it. And now it's great. I kind of regret not singing and being the front man earlier on, but I kind of think like the time was just right.
Yeah,
Like,
and all that time previously is that's working on your guitar skills because now you have to
yeah.
now you have to play and sing.
Yeah, and all those other people that I work with, I mean, they were all great lyricists and great songwriters. So I'd learned so much from each of the front people and all the bands that I was in. I think if I had done it earlier, I wouldn't have had the same experience. I probably would have just probably wouldn't have worked out. So
It all works out in
it
the
all
end.
works out in the wash, yeah, as they say. Yeah.
So so you started writing you started writing new music. Was that that point where you're like, okay, my here's a question. Where did the Mighty Joe Castro moniker come from?
That came out like funny enough because of the internet. I was gonna do a website. At the time, this is early, like around 2001, joecastro.com was taken. So I was like, well, I got to do something else, because I want to use my name. And so I just thought, well, I was always into like movies like, Mighty Joe Young, which is about like the
Mm.
ape and growing up in the 70s. Like it seems like monkeys and things are King Kong, Planet of the Apes. So I just thought Mighty Joe Young, I'll change it to Mighty Joe Castro. And then the minute I did that, it just stuck. And so it just kind of went from there. It's just one of those things.
Nice.
But
Okay.
yeah, it's like a simple story. Nothing exciting. It wasn't like one day I woke up and I was like, I'm big, I'm mighty. No, it's just named after a monkey. That's all. you know.
That's great. So, you started writing and singing, singer songwriting, and how did you pull your band together to what it is now?
Well, for a little while, I did a record with a band. The first one I was singing called the Lift Up, and
Mm.
that was the two of the guys who was in the situation with me, my friend Larry Zabatrini and John Paul Travis, and we were just. It was a little more like a power trio, kind of garagey version of what the Gravamen became, and we did that for a little while, and then our bass player Larry got a job working for the Disney Corporation and moved to Florida, and so I ended up moving away from where I was living outside of Philly, and then came out here. I live in like Collegeville, Pennsylvania area now.
Mm.
And in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do something that was a little kind of rockabilly-ish, was an upright bass and that kind of thing. I've wanted to do that for a long time, and I just thought, well, next spin I do, whatever it is, that's the way it's going to be. Like, I don't want to waste any more time. So it wasn't until our first bass player, a guy named Daniel Hoover, he found me online, and he was just like, 'cause I was looking for a musician, and he was as well, and he was like, "I think we have sort of similar interests, and we want to do something that's sort of rockabilly based, but that's not too formulaic." Because a lot of you run into a lot of rockabilly music where it's like people are just sort of doing either a lot of covers or they're doing original songs that kind of sound like covers, and they're singing about, stuff that's like using lingo from the 50s, and it's almost sort of like cosplay in a way, like
Yeah, yeah. It's like they're not making anything contemporary. They're trying to hold on
right,
to the
and I don't
past.
really wanna, like, throw any shade on that or whatever. It's
Yeah,
not what I
that's not what you
wanted to
want to
do. I just felt like I can't go up there and sing a song about working on cars because I don't know anything about working on cars. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like a car guy, so I was like, "Well, gosh, I can't do that, and I wanna write songs about sock hops or, I can't write songs about, dating young girls. I'm in my 40s, you know what I mean? I gotta, like, think of this different way, and so to me, it's like I looked at it as like we're gonna take like a 1957 like Chevy, and we're gonna put an electric engine in it and like a nice sound system. You know what I mean? Take some old that style and update it. Because I love that old rock and roll music, and it's still like sort of the base for a lot of what's going on in music these days.
Absolutely.
And so, let's just do that. Sort of try to find a way to breathe some new life into it and make it exciting again, at least for us.
Yeah, no, it's always great to take an old art form and re-up it.
Yeah, because I feel like in a lot of ways, like music, rock and roll, when it started, it was so much about like not offending, but sort of outdoing the generation before
Before,
you.
yes.
So you had like punk came out and that was really aggressive, and they were like, and then you had metal, and it was like who could play music the hardest and the fastest, and then you had electronic music who could do it this way with everything got to so much extremes,
Mhm.
and I felt like we sort of pushed everything as far as it could go. Like you couldn't play music any faster. You couldn't, it's already sort of
Everything's been done.
been done, yeah, so I thought, well, maybe now's the time, like, sort of, pull back, go
Recycle.
back to the start, and just sort of clear your own path and sort of, like, let's go back to the fork in the road and just drive through the cornfield, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's always nice to go back and, I don't wanna say recycle, but, like, revitalize and reuse the old art form and then just bring some new life into it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I think there's something about that rock and roll beat and that music that still, like, lives on that people still like. I still walk around and see people wearing, like, Johnny Cash shirts all the time, and,
I was gonna say it, and if you ever play, the famous Chuck Berry intro, or
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
no matter what one of those songs that start like that, everyone knows what it is.
Yep, yep, and it's cool because as our band has played a bunch of shows, we'll play with heavy metal bands, punk bands, country bands, and they all seem to dig what we're doing because they're like, "Oh, I love that style of music," because it is like the root of so many different things. So it's kinda cool.
So let's get into that a little bit. We have a few of your songs here. Let's start with "There Are No Secrets Here." Tell me about that one.
That song is kind of like a, sort of song about, darkness and depression, I guess. It's kind of got like a moody, driving at night vibe. Um, I don't know. People compared it to like David Lynch and a little bit of Raymond Chandler, um, which is I don't know. I seem to get compared less to musicians and more to like authors and directors, but I kind of dig that. So
That's kind of cool.
yeah, it's kind of random.
Actually.
Like people said that, like, oh, your music, it reminds me of like Sunset Boulevard or these movies, and you remind me of Billy Wilder. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's cool because a lot of times people say stuff and I'm not even sure who they're talking about, but then I'll go back and like do research on those people, and then I'll be like, oh, I love this. Why didn't I know about this?
Beforehand,
Yeah.
right?
Because it was funny, like with someone like David Lynch, I was never like a big David Lynch fan until this album came out, and a lot of people kept comparing us to David Lynch, and I was like, man, I always heard about Twin Peaks. I never watched it. Never really got into David Lynch. And then I went, like, during the pandemic, I went and did a deep dive on him. And then I was like, this all makes sense. Like, David Lynch loves early rock and roll, meditating, and coffee. And that's like my 3 favorite things. I'm like, this makes total sense. Like, we're on the same page. Like, like, oh my gosh, why didn't I hear about this earlier? But I just wasn't tuned in right.
So tell me about the songwriting process of this one.
This one, man, I wrote the music for it pretty quick, and the lyrics were they just take a long time. Like, I don't know. It's not like that much of an exciting process, like playing the song all the time and just trying to like sort of figure out, what the lyrics are going to be, and just sort of a lot of times I always say, like, with songwriting at the beginning, it's sort of like intro conversation, like small talk, where you're just sort of like, you write out some quick lyrics and it's like, how are you doing? How's the weather today? What's going on? Kind of like, and then
Very surfacey.
yeah, very surface. And as you work on it, you start to get to know each other a little bit. And then it's like, you get a little deeper. It's like a relationship with a person, and after a while, and then maybe not until like halfway through the song, then you starting to realize what it's about and how you want to sort of take it, or where you want it to sort of go. But there is something mysterious about it that I don't totally understand it. Sometimes I go back to some lyrics or some songs, I don't remember like how I did it. So I try not to analyze it too much and just let the magic kind of happen as it does.
Well, let's listen to this. This is There Are No Secrets Here by Mighty Joe Castro and The Gravamen.
The dark cloud is a hunter waiting to unload. Memories pierce the fog like a switchblade at your throat. Hear the reflection in the mirror. Whisper there are no secrets here. The dark hides the sting of every feeling left unsaid. Feel like a soap bubble trapped in a summer spider web. The crows on the road show no fear. They know there are no secrets here. Hold your breath and you will find you can't suffocate that fear out of your mind. I've been driving all night looking for you, baby. I've been drinking all night. I wish you were here. Watchmen of the blood moon, thin like a cigarette. Sing about your demons, but you don't sound possessed. Well, I don't believe you're not sincere. And we know there are no secrets here. Granite in the greenery, another season in the sun. The angels rattle on and on while the devil pickpockets got. And wilted blossoms exhale in despair. And they prove there are no secrets here. Hold your breath and you will find you can't suffocate that fear out of your mind. I've been driving all night looking for you, baby. I've been drinking all night. I wish you were here. Been driving all night looking for you, baby. I've been drinking all night. I wish you were here.
I like this background audio. What is that?
We had like recorded. There's like a lot of stuff going on in the background. One thing is we put a microphone out the window at Minor Street, and we were just recording like the nighttime sounds of Fishtown, Philadelphia, like just sort of like, so you hear kind of in the background like some of like the trains going by and stuff like that, sort of like.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we wanted to put some of that in there, and then we added some effects to it and stuff. We had kind of bookends. The last song of the album kind of fades out with that kind of sound coming through, so it kind of filters through, you know.
You know what? Because I know so many of the rockabilly legends would have done stuff like that. Would have taken the sounds of nature and just made it turn like Bob Dylan. For
Yeah.
a fact he would have gone out to a forest with the recording set, just recorded that whole thing and just sang over it.
Yep. There's
That's-
something cool to sort of put that kind of atmosphere. So when people, especially if listening headphones or you're at home, you can hear these sort of sounds, kind of put you in a place. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Absolutely. And that was off your full length album.
Yep.
And so tell me about the recording process of that. Was that did you want to do an album the traditional way where it like tells a story, or was it more of like a collection of songs?
It was kind of more of a collection of songs. We did this album different than other albums I've done in the past, and I really like this format. We've kind of continued with it, but now we go into the studio for 2 days and we sort of record just 2 songs in those 2 days, start to finish. So a lot of times when people make a record, they'll go in and they're like, okay, we're going to do 12 songs and we're going to spend days just getting the drums right. And we're going to record the drums, and the guitar player's going to come in for 3 days and work on guitar sounds, and the singer's going to come in. And I got tired of that sort of like working on everything at the same time. It's like kind of hard to focus. So this way we would just go and we would just record 2 songs on one day and then kind of played most of it live. Then we mixed it the next day, and it was great because you really could focus on just the 2 songs. And a lot of people were like, well, aren't you worried about the drum sound not matching up the next time you came to the studio? And like, nah, they'll all sound a little different, but it's just going to sound like us playing anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
I was about to say, and then they're all each individual songs, so it's not gonna.
It's not like I don't know. You listen to a greatest hits album, and people aren't like, "Well, I don't know. The sounds different on this song to that song."
That's kind of the point.
That is kind of the point. Yeah, yeah. So we did it. And we were talking about during the break. We started in December of 2019. We recorded the first 2 songs. This was one of them, and then we sort of went back on a couple weekends, every weekend, every few times a month, and we did 2 more songs. So we got all 10 done, and then we went in and did final mixes. And yeah, we walked out with the finished mixes of the album. I think it was 2 or 3 days right before everything got shut down with the pandemic. So it was like a crazy time to be recording because we'd go there, and at the beginning we just sort of heard about the whispers, something on, yeah. And then we'd come back a month later, and then everyone hear more, and all of a sudden you're starting to hear
It's
about
in Italy
people.
now.
Yeah, and by the last few days we were there, it was just like everyone was just paranoid, wondering when things were going to get shut down or what was going to happen. But yeah, it's like we walked out of there with those masters, and then it was that time it was just a big decision about whether we wait to put the album out for the pandemic to be over, or we just release it.
So, and you ultimately decided to release it.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, why wait? Like, people are going to be home. Like, we can't play shows to promote it.
Exactly. Yeah, this is the perfect time to release music because everyone's at home anyway. What more are they going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was good or bad decision in the long run. I did miss playing shows. We did a couple live stream stuff, like me doing acoustic to promote it, and but it was cool. But it was funny because there's something like we had to make some music videos for some of the songs. And obviously we couldn't get together in a band and play, and we couldn't have someone come and film it. So I had to do a lot of that myself. So it was a opportunity to teach myself a lot more about filmmaking. So like I did the video for this one, for No Secrets Here, in my little studio at home. I filmed it with an iPhone and a couple flashlights that were taped like mic stands. And then I edited it with this old B-movie footage, and it came out really cool. And then the second video I did all in After Effects. I never knew how to use After Effects, but I thought, well, like,
figure it out.
I got time in my hands now. I better learn how to figure it out. So, there's something to be said for like just taking those lemons and turning them into, lemonade or whatever, and just using those obstacles as a way to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if anything we all had during COVID was time.
Yeah.
So why not use it to And I'm so happy a lot of people had that time to like reset themselves.
I miss it a little bit, to be honest. I mean,
yeah, right.
I feel bad for everyone that went through hard times, and a lot of people I know went through a lot of rough times. But for me, it wasn't that. It was kind of nice at the downtime. I miss things slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, I not that I want to bring it back.
Yeah. Wish we could speed up so fast. Like, can we find like a happy medium where things are going a little bit not as fast, but
right.
But still good,
Right.
But yeah.
So, what was that time like for you? You mentioned that you're learning all of this new stuff. Was that including writing new stuff, or were you just chilling and learning how to make videos at that
Yeah,
point?
that was pretty much it. Like, I wasn't writing that much because the album was done, but I had to create the album cover art, so I was working on that. Like I said, I directed a few of the videos and just sort of figuring out like all that stuff, like promotional work. So it was like kind of flipped my brain to artist mode.
And so, why did you chose vinyl as well to do a vinyl thing? So why that? Check this out.
Well, I mean, I love vinyl as a medium, and I still collect records. I love going to, record stores, and I know like you can't really sell CDs in record stores as much anymore, but there still is like a huge market for vinyl. So I wanted to make sure that our album was available for vinyl instead of streaming. I'd like it. There's like a little more of a permanence to it. And yeah, I just love the format on vinyl.
Gives a little gravitas too.
Yeah, and it's something else to sell at shows, and people are asking me if it's going to be on vinyl. Like, yeah, it's an expensive thing to do, but
it's worth it.
Yeah.
So tell me, I'm kind of curious about the Gravamen. Where did that come from? What's that all about?
The name or the
name?
Well, that's another funny story. We were just trying to think of a name, and every band name under the sun has kind of been taken. Right. So I knew we were going to use Mighty Joe Castro and the something. I didn't know what it was going to be, and we were kind of going back and forth. And then one day I just opened this dictionary app and it had word of the day, and the word of the day was Gravamen, which is a legal term for the person who complains and like a complainer. The
really?
Yeah. So I believe it's pronounced Gravamen, but I wanted to pronounce it as Gravamen because I thought that sounded cooler. But now every once in a while, people will come up to me and someone say, "You're pronouncing it wrong. It's Gravamen." I'm like, well, thank you. That tells me that you're a lawyer. So
Yeah, right. So
keep your hands out of my pockets. But
yeah, right.
But nah, it's just a funny thing. So yeah, we just went with Gravamen, and people misspell it all the time and say Graveman or something like that. But yeah, it was just kind of made sense, like Mighty Joe Castro and the Complainers or something, That was kind of fun, kind of funny,
That's awesome. So we have your title track next.
Mhm.
Come on, Angels. Tell me about that. What was that all about?
Like the writing process or how that came
Yeah.
about. Man, I don't know. That one was just sort of like, it's kind of like about needing a night out and going out with friends and old friends, and just sort of just like a night on the town kind of thing. And just sort of wanted, I wrote, I wanted like a single for the album, wanted something that's kind of poppy and has like sort of a Richie Valens kind of feel to the song. And
This was it.
yeah, this is it.
So let's take a listen to Come On Angels by Mighty Joe Castro and the Gravamen.
You don't have to worry about nothing, when nothing's all you're ever gonna amount to. My pockets were empty and on fumes I was running down that dotted white line to you. 'Cause I wanna be more tonight than just background noise in my own life. So come on, angel, pour the whiskey. Come on, angel, sing it with me tonight. My head was a school bell that was constantly ringing. We slid off a bus in Baltimore. Still I'm determined to pick up where we parted, as peanut shells on a barroom floor. We're gonna crawl this neon mile until the crack of the cue ball breaks your cemetery smile. So come on, angel, pour the whiskey. Come on, angel, sing it with me tonight. The call for surrender's an empty prayer, and I must be out of practice 'cause I've forgotten how to care. Come on, angel, pour the whiskey. Come on, angel, sing it with me. Come on, angel, pour the whiskey. Come on, angel, sing it with me tonight. Come on, angel, tonight. Gonna be here all night, baby. Yeah, tonight.
And that was Come On Angels by Joe Castro and the Gravamen. So tell me a little bit about bringing rockabilly into the new age. What does all that include? You say you want to bring it into the new age lyrically and sonically. Tell me a little bit about that process for you.
Yeah, it was just sort of like, like a lot of that early rock and roll was before a lot of effects pedals were built.
Mhm.
So before that sort of revolution came out, and it was just a matter of like taking, because a lot of those lyrical concepts on those early records, I wanted to write something that I could sing as a person of my age and my background that would sort of ring true, or bring something a little more like lyrical to that stuff, sort of
Right.
like the influence that like Bob Dylan and these other, musicians, Leonard Cohen and stuff, had, that came after that stuff. Like what
Mhm.
would have happened if Buddy Holly or Richie Valens had access to that stuff when they were coming up? Like how different would their music sort of have been. And so that's sort of it, like take the best bits of everything and combine it into something else, because as much as I love, 50s music and stuff, like I love a lot of different kinds of music. Like I said, I grew up with listening to punk rock and a lot of British stuff, 80s, Britpop and that kind of stuff, echoing the Bunny Men and the Smiths and all that stuff that they would show in 120 minutes on MTV back in the day. So it's just sort of like combining all that stuff and then hopefully coming up with something that's a little bit unique.
So, and you're kind of doing a little bit of a campaign against racism in this as well, right?
Yeah, well, I started in 2019. Like I started making these stickers that just said "Rockabilly against racism," and it happened at the time. There was just so much going on. There were a lot of these racial
There's a
motivated
lot of things
attacks.
going
And
on,
at the
yeah.
time, I remember there was a shooting in El Paso, and I
Yes,
hearing about
yes.
this guy who just drove an hour out of his way to go down and just shoot Mexican or people of Mexican descent, like in this town in Texas. And I thought, like, this is horrible. Like, you feel so helpless. There's not so much that you can do. But there was a lot of this sort of racial propaganda out there, and I thought, well, the best way to combat propaganda is with more propaganda. So I thought I'm going to put out like these rockabilly against racism stickers. In the rockabilly scene, you have a lot of people that are sort of bringing the Confederate flag around and stuff like that, and putting that up. And you know, I just thought it was ridiculous. So for me, I wanted it to create something that was all inclusive, so that people could come regardless of what their ethnic background or religious background or sexuality, whatever, could come to those shows and feel safe. So I thought if we start flooding the scene with a bunch of these stickers and get bands that are sort of like mind, people will start to feel comfortable, because as much as we're influenced by the 50s sound and style, I don't want people to think that we're some throwback band. We're trying to bring things back to the values of the 50s. Like we put on the bottom of a lot of our flyers, we say vintage style, not vintage values. Like I don't want to bring stuff back to a time where people were oppressed or anything like that. So that's sort of like it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And I started giving the artwork away to other people. And so now, like, especially in Europe, it's gotten big where people print their own T-shirts and give out stickers. And I've with the sticker campaign, I was just saying to people like, hey, if you want some, send me your address. I'll mail you a stack of stickers for free. And I've sent them to pretty much every continent, I think, in the world at different times, just paid for it out of pocket because I didn't want to make any money off it. And then now we have like a Facebook group. We got a couple other things going on. We'd like to do some benefits for different organizations at some time. And there's been some talk about that, but it's hard because it's not really a formal organization with like any sort of board or anything like that.
Right,
It's just
of
sort
course.
of like
Just
was
an
an
idea.
idea just to put that positive energy out there for people and know that, like, you're welcome. We don't really want any of that racist nonsense at
Yeah.
our shows,
And it goes to show because there are certain groups that think they can claim certain genres of music,
Yeah.
all to themselves. But music is for everyone.
Yeah, what I loved about early rock and roll and rockabilly was that it was such a mix of cultures. Like it was
Yeah.
like a mix of like Chicago blues with country and western with
The
the New
Motown
Orleans
sound,
sound,
yeah.
like all these things sort of would
Coalesce.
coalesce. Like we were talking about Chuck Berry. Like I was reading this book about him recently when he first came out. People thought he was white on the radio because he had sort of a country sound.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like that's what that early music was about. They broke down a lot of boundaries, and you hear about these shows where the audiences would be segregated and the bands would come on and they would sort of force the line and get mixed. And, like it was a rebellious music for its time. And I think anyone that wants to sort of change history and say that it wasn't and that it was just something else and put some kind of like white power stamp on it, we don't really want to go for that,
No. And it's not what it's about. Music, and I can't stress this enough. Music is music, and
Yeah.
it's for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. And it also took some influence from in the 1970s. There was a movement called Rock Against Racism in the
Really?
UK, and there's a good documentary about it. And the Clash and Joe Strummer and stuff were involved in that, and it was sort of fighting against the National Front when they were making a lot of moves in like the late 70s. And so I just sort of took it and said, well, we'll do Rockabilly Against Racism and put it out. So it's just sort of like just let people know when they come to our shows, like everybody's welcome as long as you're cool,
As long as you're cool.
Yeah, as long as you're
right.
cool, we don't want no trouble.
As long
like,
as you're cool and cordial.
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So you are starting to write again. You have a new song that just
Yep.
came out. Tell me a little bit about that.
yeah. It's called Embers in the Ash. It's a little little different, something different for us, a little more like almost folk sounding. We had someone we know come in and play accordion on the song as well. And
Accordion.
yeah, there's an accordion on it.
That's sick.
Yeah, I always wanted to have a song with accordion, so it's just sort of the perfect one to do it, because I love like a lot of Tom Waits and the Pogues,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So now we're just sort of figuring out with our next record, we're working on a bunch of songs, and I think we're going to sort of try to push the sound a little bit and figure out what to do next, and just grow as a band.
So yeah, tell me a little bit. We have the music video lined up here, so tell me a little bit about that process because there was a cool story behind that.
Yeah. So the music video, I had this idea that I wanted to film it in bad weather, and so we recorded the song on the winter solstice of last year, December 21st, which is also our guitarist Mike Stingle's birthday, which was cool. But I was just waiting for a big snowstorm because there's a lot of weather imagery in the lyrics and stuff. So I thought, well, I want to film it in slow mo, like when it's snowing and all this stuff. And then we went through the whole winter without any
Yeah,
bad
right. What was
weather.
all that about?
No bad weather at all, nothing. And then the song was
So
released, and it was like, I don't know, we're running out of time. And so there were all these bad storms in the south, and I heard they were moving up. And so this one Saturday morning, I just looked at the weather, and I was like, I think there's a chance it's for thunderstorms today. And I called up a buddy of mine named Brandon who does some filming, and I said, do you want to meet in Manayunk? And we're going to film this video, and this is what we're going to do. And he showed up, and we were out there for like half an hour, and we shot 5 takes in 15 minutes. And it went from being sort of sunny to these severe thunderstorms. We got completely drenched and washed away. It was funny. We headed out right when we got to the last take. We ran over to this restaurant, this bar, and we walked in, and everyone just looked completely horrified. We walked in just dripping. We sat down. They had to mop up around us twice.
That's funny.
I had like puddles in my shoe. Like I went to the bathroom and just like dumped them out and like the toilet, and they came back and tried to. We were just like, we looked like aliens, man. It was great.
That's
we got
awesome.
so wet. It was, and you can see it in the video, but it's worth it. Like,
Yeah,
it kind of came out cool.
that makes a great product. And if you're a musician who's dedicated to their craft, that's what it takes.
Yeah, just sort of like, all right, like you can see lightning in it was crazy. Unfortunately, I wanted to include the rest of the band in the video. Originally was the plan, but it didn't work out. It's kind of hard logistically to make that work with 4 people when you're waiting on the weather. Like there was no
Right.
guarantee at any time it was going to happen. So it was full guerrilla style.
So we're gonna take a listen to, or take a watch actually to that video. Let's see
Awesome.
it.
There's only one way of knowing if it's raining or if it's snowing. You gotta get wet sometimes to learn which way the wind's been blowing. But if home's too far to climb, you can come dry out anytime. We will sit by the firelight, count the embers in the ash tonight. It's been a tough year to call. Fate took a fair piece of us all. I watched you dive under the waves and tread water in the squall. But that struggle made you strong as you survived another storm. In the darkness you shone bright, like these embers in the ash tonight. Well, embers in the ash still going strong, won't quit the fight for anyone. Even the tiniest spark can start a blaze. Some friends are like the sun, they disappear when the clouds come. You and I dance hand in hand through every puddle when it rains. Like a sailor adrift afar, returning home uses the stars. If there is no land in sight, use these embers in the ash tonight. There's only one way of knowing if it's raining or if it's snowing. You gotta get wet sometimes to learn which way the wind's been blowing.
And that was Mighty Joe Castro and The Gravamen. That was their brand new single, Embers in the
Ash.
Ash.
Embers in the Ash. Out now.
Out
on all
now.
streaming platforms.
So where can people find you on like online or anywhere?
You can go to my website, which is mightyjoecastro.com. You can also go to thegravamen.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Obviously, we're on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, all that stuff under Mighty Joe Castro and the Gravamen. You go to my web store as well on mightyjoecastro.com. We have vinyl for sale, t-shirts, all that kind of stuff.
Athletes, go support them and their things. What do you think is next for you guys as a band? Is there more writing to be done? Is there what's up?
Yeah, we've been in the studio again. We're just gonna keep putting out like little singles for the next few months, and then eventually put out a full complete album. But we've got next song is gonna come out probably in maybe probably early June at this point. It's called Take the Blame. And that's coming out. And we got a bunch of shows we're gonna be playing this summer. And yeah, just really I want to find someone to help put out the record. Like I want to just keep putting these singles out and really hopefully find someone to help at least distribute the vinyl. And 'cause that's the one thing holding us back right now is we got these vinyl records and I want to find a way to get them into the record stores.
The circuits, yeah.
So we want to find a record label to partner with for distribution of the vinyl and stuff like that. And yeah, I got to finish writing the rest of the songs for the record, but we got about 4 recorded now. We're gonna finish doing that and get back in and try to earn some money to just keep going.
And so, is this your full-time job at this point, or?
I do art, graphic design, and music, and so it's sort of like a combination of those things. But my graphic design work pretty much pays the bills right now between that and art stuff that I do.
I was gonna say it looks great on
thank
the
you.
stickers. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
absolutely. So, so do you do clientele for graphic design too?
Yeah,
You want to plug that as well?
Yeah, yeah. I do everything from I do logos for companies. I've done, video work, t-shirts, posters, all kinds of stuff. It's like pretty wide range. But if you go to mightyjoecastro.com, you get my design portfolios up there as well. Be happy to help you out with any of your advertising, your graphic design needs.
Sure. So we're gonna go into a time of questions I like to ask all my guests, and the first one is, what is one of the worst or funniest things that's ever happened to you on stage?
I remember one, and this was an early show with my band Nero. We were playing at this Trabant Student Center in Newark, Delaware, and we thought it'd be cool to bring a smoke machine. And I remember just playing that thing. We turned it on. The guy was running, was just flooding the place with smoke, and we were like 5 songs in, and it just put off the smoke alarms,
Of course,
the sprinklers, and everyone had to go run out and stuff like that. And the show ended.
Oh my goodness.
So that was great because actually it was a horrible show. We were playing so bad, so I was so thankful that the show kind of got pulled. It made it much more memorable. We sort of called the cops on ourselves.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
That's awesome. So, this is, the latest project in a string of projects for you. Is there anything you want to do in the future? Is there another project that you would really want to be a part of, or what?
I think right now, this is it. Just keep going with this and just enjoy writing songs and just doing that. I mean, there's a few. I have another little side project, a little fun little band called the Failing Heart. So they get together with 2 friends of mine named
That's a good band.
Jay Cattle and a friend named Steve. And it's really just like an improvisational, we'll get together in a day and be like, we're just going to write a song and record it today. And we sort of do that. We just did a song for this film that's coming out called The Boog. A guy in Delaware named Brian Wild is directing. We did a film soundtrack song for that. I'm actually going to have a small part in the movie, just a cameo as a reporter. I got to go film that this weekend. So I've been doing a little bit of acting stuff here and there as well. I wouldn't mind doing a little more of that just for fun, and songs for films, stuff like that. So, but other than that, just keep going with art and with the stuff with the Gravamen and just pushing forward. I mean, I think Mighty Joe Castro The Gravamen will be my last band. It's just this seems to be working, so keep going with it.
So sweet. So you also mentioned that you have a family, a daughter. How old is she now?
Yeah, I have 2 kids. They'll be 13 and 10 this year.
What do they think about your music?
So they love it. They sort of grew up around it and everything. Right. And so they're good kids. They're both very creative. They are both musically inclined and both artistically inclined. And one plays saxophone, one plays cello. The other one's been in a bunch of, they've both been in plays and stuff like that. And they just are very like, they're super cool kids. Like the other day, they just decided they made these rope ladders out of rope and some sticks, and they built these hammocks out of an old blankets, and they spent the night out in the yard.
That's
They
cool.
made their own shelter, and they were like, "We're gonna sleep outside tonight." I was like, "Go for it, sleep in the trees." So
Yeah,
it's
right.
so cool. The kids can still get out there and do that and stuff, and it was fun. So yeah, they're awesome, man. They're awesome.
Ever think about including them on a record or something?
Yeah, at some point, yeah, and they've got like some songs they'll write, and we'll record them at home. And we did like a short film together that they wrote, and during the pandemic, actually, we pulled them out of school and we just homeschooled them for a year. Part of the things we did, a project was they had to write a script for their own movie, and we shot it and filmed it and did a stop animation with like Lego people and everything. It's called Joyride. It's pretty cool. A friend of ours, a band called 3 Chord Money, we used one of their songs in it. Yeah, which was awesome that they let us use that. It's like it was just fun. They learned about, like, making sound effects, learned about editing, learned
That's
about,
so cool.
all these things, like how to act and film, and so it was like, I'd love to do something like that with them again, but yeah, at some point, like, as their skills get better, I'm sure, like, we'll record them use them on a track, like, throw some saxophone on there or something, it'd be awesome.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you have made or you've seen others in the music world make, and how can we curb that for the future generations?
Man, that's a good one thing I try to tell, like, other musicians is that don't cut corners when it comes to, like, going in the studio.
Mm,
Because, I mean, like, we spent a lot of money on recording our records, and people are always like, "Well, we don't wanna spend that much money, or we're just gonna do it. It's okay. It sounds good enough." But meanwhile, they're spending all this money on all this other gear that they have at home, but at the end of the day, like, when your band's gone, the thing that's gonna get remembered that will have any lasting effect is the music. So, I think make sure that what you're recording just sounds good, because that's really that's the testament, that's the rock that everything else is gonna get built off of. You know what I mean? And, like,
yeah.
I think that's important. Don't underestimate what the other people that you're working with are bringing to the table. Make sure that you treat them well and that you build a good relationship. And yeah, man, I don't know. There's so many friggin' mistakes. um, watch the ego. Just treat people with just be cool and treat people with respect, man, and just be honest. Don't be passive aggressive. I see that a lot with people. It's like, just be upfront with people
Oh,
when you
oh
have
my
to. I
gosh.
mean,
Absolutely be upfront with people because it's kind of ridiculous. You just gotta be upfront with people, honest with people. Like we're musicians. We know when someone's blowing smoke because
yeah,
it's all been done to us before.
yep,
Just be honest with each
yep.
other.
Just be honest, man. Have a good time.
Yeah, have a good
Have a good
time.
time. Yeah.
And when we say be honest, don't be mean. But
Right, right.
if you
Yeah,
don't like
yeah.
something, say you don't like something.
Yeah, yeah. And just and have thick skin too. I think that's good too. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people that are too afraid to put their music out because they're worried about what people will think, or it's not good enough. And you just got to go with it and just keep creating and keep moving forward.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter who likes doesn't like it. It matters if you like it.
Right. No one's gonna love everything that you
Exactly.
do.
As long as you're proud of it.
And they shouldn't. Yeah. And just don't be afraid to take chances and just keep trying to find ways to keep it interesting for yourself and just, keep moving forward. It gets harder as you get older because you don't want to repeat yourself too much and you've done some of that stuff already. It's like the newness of it is
Mhm.
not there. The excitement of it wanes a little bit, but keep going. Yeah.
Well, with all that said, this is Mighty Joe Castro. You can find him on all your websites.
Yeah. MightyJoeCastro.com, thegravamen.com. Yeah.
And my name is Corey Rosen. This has been a story podcast. We have some really great stuff coming up I want to share with you. First off, we have our singer-songwriter studio where we are bringing in 3 or 4 other artists within the area, and the challenge is to create a song within an hour.
Mm.
And so it's gonna be like a live documentary of that process. And I'm really excited. The first one of those is starting in May, and I would love to have you be a part of it, especially if you want to
Oof,
collaborate more.
man, yeah, the idea of doing a song in an hour is tricky.
It's tricky, but
As long as I don't have to write the words, I can do it.
yeah.
The words are just
But that's fine. We're gonna be where the goal is to get at least one songwriter and then a few instrumentalists together and write something out. Or something I'm really excited to do is to like mash genres. That's something I'm really excited to do. bringing together a metal vocalist with a country sound, or
Yeah.
a jazz singer into a hip hop context.
That'd be awesome.
That would be really great.
Yeah.
So that's some of the stuff I want to we're looking at, and this first one is going to be May 1st. So I'm really excited for that. Otherwise, this Thursday we have Matt Wheeler, who is one of the faculty staff here. He does music as well, and a really great guy. I'm really excited to talk to him about all of his music that's coming out. And then we don't have anything until that May 1st. And then next Tuesday, I'm really excited to announce that we have Chris Strayer, who owns Stray, who is a great staging company based in Lidditz here. And he's actually the person who set up all of this stuff too.
Awesome.
So I'm really excited to have him on and talk about how he started his career and everything that revolves around Stray. Otherwise, we have our single reviews and our album reviews starting to ramp up again. If you don't know what those are a show where musicians can submit their albums or submit their singles, and we bring in another artist from the area and we just go over them, give our feedback on them, what we like, what we don't like, things that could use some tweaking or whatever. So it's a great chance for new artists to not only get their music out, but also get some feedback from other musicians in the area. And I'm really excited to start those again. With all that said, my name is Corey Rosen. This is the Story Podcast. You can find out all of that information and more at CoreyRosenProductions.com. That's CORYROSEN Productions.com. And we will see you guys later. Bye.
Cheers.